Super. Hey, Franz.
John, good to see you again. Fireside chat. It's just a little bit hot for a fireside, so I've got my safari shirt on. I see you kitted out in ET.
Yeah, I've got a shirt in the car, but it's just too hot.
It's just too hot for shirts today, basically. We're not going to go shirtless, right? That's just one. That's too far.
No, with an office in South Africa, this is a real heat wave.
Okay.
Yeah. Not the 18 degrees I was told it might be.
So let's get back onto hot topics in the IT world. That's why everyone comes in their millions to watch this channel and us having these conversations. So tell me what you think about what's happening in the hardware market. Everyone's talking about it.
Well, it's mad. And it's mad for 100. Don't get me started with why we're here and how ridiculous it is that people are investing that much money in AI when we haven't even got energy to power it and that kind of stuff. But let's miss that completely. I guess the issue for me is, like, this is for a lot of customers is an even bigger strategic decision to make than when we were talking about the Broadcom changes. Broadcom with Broadcom, people had choice. They could say, well, I'm going to move from Broadcom to Nutanix, or actually we're going to go OpenShift, or whatever else. The issue with the hardware market right now is there's just no hardware. So if you're currently running VCF on Broadcom or even vSphere, if you can't buy a new server, you haven't got processors to move forward. If you want to buy Nutanix, you're in exactly the same place right now. And so I think, we've come up with a lot of ways to fix that issue, but it's a big strategic decision, I think, that customers really need to get their head around.
Yeah, I mean, I've one particular customer, just reflecting on this being public sector and it, being a long procurement cycle. When they first started looking at a platform refresh, and it was, as you say, was replacing Broadcom. And back then, this is now in June last year, the conversation was a Broadcom versus Nutanix, and looking at the comparatives of the features and looking at the costs of those, as if that was the importance in the exercise. The hardware element back then was £500,000 odd. Got the new quote this morning, 2.5 million. So slight increase in price, a little bit above budget. But more seriously, that kind of breaks any kind of procurement decision, any kind of, investment decision, any kind of budgeting and planning goes out the window. So how do you deal with that? And now all of a sudden, it almost becomes an afterthought. Well, what software are we going to run on it? Because we can't get the hardware, and if we could, we can't afford it. So how do we fix that? And I think we've seen in the last probably month or two, where in the beginning, all the vendors were kind of increasing their prices sort of neck on neck. There is a bit of a divergence at the moment, which is interesting. I can't fully explain it other than to think that some of the vendors had the foresight earlier in the year to realize this was happening, bought some stock in advance, and it can now offer it out at old prices, shall we say. So I'm not going to give away our trade secrets here. They're going to have to come and call us, John. It's not going to be us calling them. It's going to be them calling us and saying, how do you do it? Because we have an option where, in this particular scenario for this customer, working with one particular hardware vendor, we're able to shave about £1 million off of that price. Now, it is still much more than it was last year, but at least it's not 2.5 million. So we have ways we can address that. There's other things that we can do. We have access to a large amount of rental stock, that can be used to bridge the gap, maybe for the next 12 to 18 months until things settle. So it can still run and be fully supported, with Nutanix. It's not the latest generation hardware, but it bridges a gap. So, I think that's, some of the areas we'll be helping with at ET Works. I don't know if you want to talk maybe about some of our cloud partners and how we're working with them on this space.
Yeah, well, I think, now there's not a one fit, it's not like if we say, well, we'll use this vendor, it's going to be cheaper or whatever else. It really is a multitude of kind of options, and one of those is the cloud vendors. Right now, if you're looking at a 3-year TCO, we can probably do that better in someone like OVH, for instance, than doing that with hardware. If you want heavy GPU right now, you can actually get GPU relatively quickly, but actually it's very expensive. So, it could be a deploy on cloud first, particularly if you don't know what those workloads look like, rather than overinvest in technology you don't necessarily need. But I think as well, customers need to start, and this is not an ET Works secret, it's an industry problem right now. If prices are changing every 7 days, you can't have a budget cycle internally that takes, I have a customer only Friday
Yeah.
that emailed me and said, look, I've got the go ahead on this project, but it's become too expensive. I met him 2.5 months ago and said, if you're going to buy this year, you buy now. You don't wait, because it's going to be a disaster. We put together quotes. He's had those quotes for 2 months, but his internal budget cycle is what it is. So he's come back to say, look, it's a bit pricey. Can you get it? If you can get it at this price, then we can move forward. And I'm like, well, since we discussed it, it's gone up 15, 20%. So there is no money to take out of it. You know, we can't do deals. So I think my advice would be almost get pre-agreement before we could give you a guide in terms of, well, that's a 100,000, 200, 500,000, $1 million sized project, but start having those discussions early, so when we actually get to the quoting stage, we only have weeks to get the actual deal on the table and sorted. That's not to say it has to be done in 2 weeks, but if you ask me today for a price and I have to quote it again in 2 weeks' time, I don't know what that's going to look like.
No, I completely agree, and I'm glad you were giving good advice to your customers. I was saying the same thing to them. Either buy now or don't buy at all, kind of thing. Wait a year if you can, or and what we're doing with customers who've got older generations of hardware, Nutanix have now extended G7 support on the software until December, I believe, 2029. So that gives customers with that older hardware an option just to ride this period out until prices hopefully stabilize or find a more rational level. There are still some questions around the hardware support, but again, ET works to the rescue. We can put together custom packages, third-party maintenance packages, ways to support that hardware if it can't be officially obtained through the vendor. And the nature of the way Nutanix support works, it's probably the one vendor I'd feel quite comfortable running in a production environment, still having that access to Nutanix support, as long as you've got some form of cover on the hardware and enough capacity on the hardware in terms of overhead, that you're not running this thing hot. Then I think it's a workable solution for customers just to bridge a gap.
Yeah. And where do you? I mean, no one will give us an answer, but finger in the air, where do you see this going, changing?
It's a good question. Obviously, we're speaking to the major vendors. We have good relationships with all the big OEMs. Supermicro, Fujitsu, Lenovo, Dell. We sell all of their products, HPE. On the few I've spoken to about this, everyone's kind of saying it's going to be another year. That's kind of the minimum we're looking at. What we don't know is this just the new normal? Is this what prices are going to be going forward? Are things going to stabilize and gently sort of come down, or is there going to be a drop when someone realizes actually all of those servers, all that RAM and NVMe we bought for that data center, well, we can't get any power to it, so we might not be needing it after all, so prices might come down, and maybe they come down hard. I think it's very, very early and too hard to predict. At the moment, all we know is it's just going one way, and that's up. Yeah.
I think I'm expecting to see it stabilize, like Q3, Q4, not in terms of price. It's a buyer-seller's market, and at the end of the day, if there's more people trying to buy than there are people selling, then the price can only go one way. But I think we're at the moment, it's all right. When we're giving quotes, well, I can't tell you when that's going to get delivered. I can't tell you when. And in fact, I can tell you if you want a 15 terabyte self-encrypting drive right now, then you might get one in 12 months' time. And you'll also pay as much as a house for one. But it's. I think by the time we get Q3, Q4, we'll be able to say, look, delivery times look like this, and be a bit more certain in price. But I don't see it becoming easier, which is why I'm saying really there's a big change in strategy here in terms of hedging people's bets, and there's no one answer. I have a customer that's just about to move a lot of their stuff into Azure, but actually their Azure is short on capacity and some of the hardware they need anyway. So it's definitely a more hybrid based approach, but out of necessity, not out of kind of some big strategic decision.
Yeah. There is also the risk that in 6 months, 3 months, whenever it is, that the cloud providers hike their prices too, because their input costs have gone up. It's inevitable, right? I think it would be naive to think that isn't going to happen. So I think the bottom line is, sort of wrapping this up, is speak to us, right? We have options, we have ideas,
absolutely.
we have, at least we have good suggestions and, free advice that we can offer. And certainly there to help our customers on this journey. We know it's difficult, and it's a challenge for everyone, and we want to try and get you through to the other side.
Excellent.